Hello, everybody. Welcome, New England and Bermuda members, Kiwanis International members, friends from other districts. My name is Elise DeNorfia, and I am the Leadership Development Coordinator and member of the Kiwanis Club of New England and Bermuda. I have my lovely assistant here, Chelsea. She's sleeping because the exciting part hasn't started yet. It's great to see all of you here on Zoom, and welcome to those who are watching live on Facebook. This is the 6th session in our 2021-2022 virtual workshop series, which means we're about halfway through this Kiwanis year. It's exciting and a little bit sad, probably, for some of our leaders here on this call. A reminder that all of our workshops have the potential to count as interclubs on your monthly secretary reports. If your club has enough members attending this workshop, you get to report an interclub with each individual club in attendance. To help everyone determine the number of interclubs they can report, we ask all attendees to send a quick message in the chat with your name and the club that you belong to. If your club is eligible for an interclub, you can either write down the names of clubs in attendance, click the ... next to the chat to save the chat so you can review the club names later, or visit our Google Drive of resources for a list of clubs represented at each workshop. This is compiled by our fabulous committee's interclub liaison, David Griffin, and you can always find a link to the folder in your confirmation email from Zoom, or I will drop it later in the evening. It is attached to our link tree. So before we start tonight's workshop, I'm just gonna remind you of some of the housekeeping. We're gonna keep everyone on mute to assure an uninterrupted presentation. You're welcome to keep your camera on. It's nice for our visitors, our guests, to see everyone's faces, but that's obviously not required. If you have questions for tonight's presenters, please post them in the chat. You can either send them to everyone or send them just to me. And at the end of Gayla's questioning, we should have some time for question and answer. Tonight's presentation will be about 1 hour long, and you're able to find the recordings of this workshop on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. And I'm going to post a link for that later on. So now we are going to get started. Our topic tonight is a celebration of Women's History Month. So our very own Governor Gayla Bartlett is going to interview the 2 past female international presidents, Sue Petrisin, who was Kiwanis International President in 2015, 2016, and Jane Erickson, who was Kiwanis International President in 2016, 2017. So I will hand it over to them. I'm going to spotlight them for everybody. I'm going to make sure you can all see them and also have to allow them to unmute themselves. So give me 1 second to figure out all the technology.
Okay, this is great. So thank you everybody for being here tonight. I just want to let you know I am so excited to be with these wonderful ladies tonight and all of you. This has been a dream for me, just so you know. I've been so inspired by these two, and I'm so excited and blessed that they are here in the New England and Bermuda district. Woo! I know you're all screaming on mute. Yes, you know we woohoo in New England. So first of all, my first question, I so excited to see you both, is why did you decide to run for Kiwanis International President? I mean, it's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot. And your service work that you did before is just outstanding. So Sue, if you'd like to go first, and then Jane, and let us know why you decided to take this very prestigious position.
Well, thank you, Governor. And I want to say hello to everybody in New England and Bermuda. It's great to see you. I, love seeing people on Zoom as much as sometimes we're zoomed out, but it's always great to see Kiwanis friends from around the world. So why did I run? Many of you know that my background is, I have been a member of the Kiwanis family since 1977. I started in my Key Club days. I was in Circle K and then in Kiwanis, and I had the opportunity also to serve on the Kiwanis, what's now the Kiwanis Children's Fund. And as I continued my service, I actually had several people come up to me and ask me if I would be interested in running, right? And I'm like, well, you go through all those times in your life, like, I'm working full time, what's happening? And I think that I just felt that I had not an obligation, but a responsibility to give back to the organization for all the organization had given to me. I have been a Kiwanian for so long, or a member of the family for so long, that, I have learned so much and grown so much as an individual that I wanted to be able to share my experiences and be able to help other people do the same.
Which is great. Jane?
Oh, that's great. And again, thank you, Governor, for inviting us to be here, and hello to all
Absolutely.
you wonderful Kiwani. It's so fun to see all your pictures out there. I had come from the Kiwanis International Foundation side. I had served for 7 years on the foundation board, now called the Kiwanis Children's Fund. And so when our then governor, Gus Dornbush, came to me and said, we'd like you to run for trustee, I kind of backed off just a little bit and thought, well, that's already been 7 years for us at an international level. And I'd been pretty busy before that. And I was discussing that with my youngest daughter at the time, and her daughter was sitting in front of her playing with dolls. She was pretty little. And at one time I paused, and Maya Jane, who was teeny tiny, looked up and said, wait a minute, if you run and you do a good job, can you help more kids?
Oh,
And I said, yes, if I run and I'm elected and I do a good job, we can all help more kids around the world. And she said, though, what's a big deal? Just do it. And she went off and played. And I looked at my daughter and she said, well, I guess you've been told, out of the mouths of babes. So that was kind of the beginning of that, and put together a campaign and off we went. So
that's great.
yep.
Absolutely. And I think it's so powerful. The two of you served in conjunction. So Sue, you were first, and then
Right.
Jane, you came right after. So the energy that you each have is tremendous. So seeing that you could take that energy, and sometimes, when there's a shift in leadership, sometimes it goes up and then it goes down and we're all
Right.
over the place, but you two are just both so energetic and you just have that magnetism. So I think it's great that the two of you came together.
And it's interesting that we actually were governors the same year.
Even better. So it was meant to
Yes.
be.
Yes,
Oh, absolutely.
absolutely.
Absolutely. I love it. So now, being the first two women to serve in the position, what challenges and obstacles did you have to overcome? Because I'm sure there were a lot.
Jane, you want to take it started?
Sure. I'm going to back up just a little bit because I was questioned at one time when I was president of our Kiwanis Club in Fort Dodge, Iowa. And that was our 75th year of that club. And I was the 75th president, the only woman actually. And the reporter was trying to make a big deal out of my being a female president. And I kept saying, it's really not that big a deal. And she finally came and interviewed our board. And she said, so how do you feel about Jane being the first female president? And the district court judge who was on our board looked up and he goes, Jane's a woman? Jane's a female? And I thought, oh, cut me hard here. And he went on to say, here's the deal. Jane isn't a female leader, a female president. She's a president who happens to be female. She's the right person doing the right job. And I've never forgotten that.
Mhm.
And for me, that I didn't have any problems, any challenges. My challenge came when I was on the foundation board, quite honestly. And I'm going to tell this
Really?
on this gentleman anyway, because at one point, well, I was the only woman on the board. There were 12 of us, but I was the only woman, the first and the only one. And at one point, one of the men looked at me and said, yeah, well, you wouldn't understand that. And I said, excuse me? And he said, well, this has to do with numbers. You wouldn't understand that. And I said, what do you mean I wouldn't understand it? And he said, well, you should really be at home taking care of your kids and baking cookies. And I thought, well, my kids are grown up and have their own kids. But before I could even respond, one of the other very well-respected members took him to task, did it very respectfully, but took him to task, shut him right up. And I just sat and smiled. Of course, at the next meeting, I did bring chocolate chip cookies for the entire board. But it was, again, one of those where what I was questioning was not the numbers. I wanted to know what we did with the money. Show me the children you helped with that money.
Mhm.
I can read a spreadsheet. I'm good at it. What
Right.
did you do with the money? So when I was chair of that committee, with every grant that went out, we brought in pictures of children. And Sue, I think you were on the board at
Yep.
the time that I was a chair. Yeah.
Yep.
We actually then, that same gentleman who had stood up for me later said that he loved the fact that I was a woman and brought the face of children to the foundation board and to the foundation, because prior to that, it had been about numbers. And I thought, you know what, that's one of the coolest things. So that's just one of the kind of interesting things that happened along the way.
It's great.
And I had a very similar experience. In my own club, I was the first female from my in my club and as president. And I had several gentlemen say to me, you know, well, you'll never make it because you're a woman. And, you know, you had other people that were like, well, what do you mean she won't make it? Because, well, you know, women can't do those things. And I'm like, well, why can't we? Right. It's like, you've now challenged me. So that's my challenge back to you. And I remember several of them saying, well, we're going to leave, because I joined shortly after women were admitted into Kiwanis. Right. And several people were like, well, we're going to quit. Right. And then I had wives actually call me and say, the only reason you're in Kiwanis now is so you can steal my husband. And I'm like, well, that's not really true. Right. I have no desire to do that. And the people that were actually my biggest against me at that time, right, to just be in Kiwanis in general, are now my biggest supporters. And they will do anything, you know. I mean, I can go to them and say, hey, will you make a contribution to this? And they basically write me the check. Now, it's been a long time, right? We've had a lot of relationships, but I think some of those things people go back to, like, well, you're a woman leader. No, I'm a leader who happens to be a woman.
Happens to be a woman, right?
And my community tried to do the same thing. Oh, it's the first woman leader. And I said, it doesn't matter. You know, I've said, whether I'm a woman or a man, the point is I'm a leader. And just like anybody else here, you can do the same thing.
Yeah. And Sue, it's interesting because you were the first female, I know it is a big deal though,
Right.
of any service organization. The
Correct.
first woman president. You even said that in your speech. And I thought that was like, wow. And how cool is it for Kiwanis to be the first of all the service organizations? And what a cool thing that is. And I know, you know, equality and everything, but that's such a great movement. And
I think that, you know, there were, for a long time, will tell you, I was the first governor, you know, that was female, and people would look at you like, you're crazy, right? And you're like, wait a minute, I can offer something. I'm here for the service. I have an additional responsibility, but reality is I'm here doing the same thing you are doing. And my expectation was, when I went places and did things, that we did service. That's what it's about. You know, the work that I had to do for the board or administrative stuff happened after hours, not in the middle of things. So, you know, the same thing, you know, you're working with the kids and you're doing that stuff. And, you know, I just remember I got a couple of phone calls from people that, like, do you know you're in this article? And I'm like, what article? They're like, oh, your name popped up because you're the first woman with other women. And you're like, oh, okay. But it wasn't something that I went out and said, oh, guess what? You know, I mean, my thing was, we're an organization of volunteers. That's what we do. And that's what we should be promoting. And that's what we should be celebrating. Absolutely.
I love that.
Great. Governor Gayla, I have to tell you this funny story about being the woman in that position. I was doing a women's event in New Orleans.
Oh, fun.
My husband and I and the governor and his wife walked into the bar after it was finished. And there were two people walking out, and the gentleman said, oh, Kiwanis, because he saw our name tags. And he said, would you like to meet a past Rotary governor? And we're all like, well, of course. Well, they were two past governors, one male, one female. And the governor of Lamiston said, would you like to meet the Kiwanis International president? And the gentleman said, yes. And he turned and went to shake my husband's hand. And my husband went, nope, that would be, and he pointed to me. And this guy pulled his hand back so fast.
Wow.
And I know he didn't mean to say this, but he said, a woman? How did that happen? And I started laughing and just stood there and I said, do you still want to shake my hand? Well, he did. And now the woman, the past Rotary governor, and I are very good friends. She's from Missouri. And we've gone back and forth and laughed about how funny that was, that the expectation was you couldn't have a woman. And I said, and guess what? I'm the second one. And he said, how did that happen? He said, you need to come to a few Kiwanis meetings. But we had a good time over that, and expectations were just very different.
Yeah, and I think in a way they still, I mean, they're better, but it's still a challenge. And
Right.
I know being a mother and a working mom and being in my 40s that we still hit the wall sometimes.
Right.
And it's difficult, you know, people are supportive and everything, but our ideas are, you know, they're going to be a little different from our experiences and the way we see things and the eyes that we have. So there's still that, you know, this is the way it's been done.
Right.
This is the way you do it. You can't rock the boat. I tend to rock the boat in a nice way, but we rock the boat. And I think that's okay. And I think it's good. And especially now that we have so many different, you know, books and dolls and everything focused on women being individuals and leaders, which is great.
Well,
Yeah.
and I will tell you one of the challenges, one thing that came up was I'm single and I flew and traveled by myself. You know, I mean, the majority of the time, you know, if I may have had someone else from the board with me, depending on what we were doing. And I always got that question. They would always call and say, well, where's your husband? And I'm like, well, I don't have one. And they're like, well, who's going to sit with you? And I'm like, I can sit at the table by myself.
Or with
You know?
anybody. I can mingle.
I can mingle. I can talk to people. But that was, you know, in some of countries, that was a big
Yeah.
deal, right? Who's going to sit there? And, you know, they just didn't expect that. And I remember going to Malaysia once or no, maybe it was in Taiwan. It was in Taiwan where we went and they took me down this dark road, you know, this area we were going to meet with some Kiwanis from an other club. And, you know, they take you up the elevator and you're like, where am I at? Right. I'm in this warehouse. I have no idea where I'm at. So we had our tea and we did everything. And of course, I don't speak the language. So my translator, my interpreter was telling me what they're saying. And the one gentleman said, I didn't know we even let women in Kiwanis. And then someone goes, well, yeah. And then they said, well, she's the first female. And he goes, we have female president. I mean, he had no clue.
Wow.
And it was so out of the ordinary for him. But once he realized and they explained it to him, he was, you know, ecstatic, very happy. You know, what do you need? What can I help you with? But it was just that here's another person that probably should have gone to a meeting more often, you know,
Right.
to learn that.
So what was the most exciting thing that you got, or place you got to go, or project you did while you were president? Because I've been going back through the reels and watching your videos and looking at all the different articles about your presidencies, because it's great. And you know what's wonderful about Kiwanis is that we have the magazines and everything you can find on the interweb. It's beautiful. So you guys are in the trenches as every Kiwanis international president and our trustees. You're there, you're doing the service work, you're getting to go to all these different places and meet with all these different wonderful Kiwanians from all over the world. So what was your favorite or most exciting or most emotional event or place you went? I had to throw that one in. Sorry. I was so excited by your videos and all your articles. I was like, oh, look what
That's a
they've
loaded
done.
Question. So you
Well,
go first?
Yeah, you know, I'm sitting here thinking of one that, I mean, there are honestly so many, you know, and
Right.
it's hard to put anyone in, you know, in place. And I think the one that always comes to my mind is I was actually in Europe at the time, and I had been there for a weekend meeting, and I got a phone call from Stephen Hatt, who was our facilitator, our helper back at the Kiwanis International headquarters. He was our administrative person that helped us, and he said, "You're not going home." And I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "So where am I going?" Right? I'm not getting ready to get on an airplane to come back to the States. And he said, "You're going to Baton Rouge, Louisiana." And I said, "Okay, what's going on in Baton Rouge?" You know, you're like, "I haven't seen the news." I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "And your mom sent clothes down there." I'm like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Now really, what am I doing?" Because I'm like, I had clothes, but they wanted me to have different clothes because I had been, you know, dressed up all the time. I said, "Okay." So I got down there. They had been hit by the hurricanes and had been completely flooded out. And we actually went, in fact, I just got goosebumps. They lost everything. The food bank lost all of its food. It was a total disaster. And I remember sitting there going, "Okay, you know, what are your plans?" Right? And they said, first off, we're going to go visit some schools that are not underwater, so we can give backpacks to the kids and give them supplies that they need to continue their education. So we did that, you know, in one afternoon. And then they said, "And today we're going to go tear down a house." And I said, tear down a house. They're like, well, we have a home here that's been completely destroyed. And it's the lady that lived in it actually was the wife of a former member of their Kiwanis club.
Oh,
And her husband had been deceased. And they said, we know that she can't do this work, whether health-wise or, physically or whatever. And they said, so we're going to go do that. And it was one of the houses that they had a number of houses they were working on. So we went over and literally we tore down walls, we were doing everything we could, tearing walls, tearing up carpeting, everything. And we were there for a few hours. And during that time frame, we were just loading stuff out onto the street because there was nowhere else to put it.
right.
And several of her family members had come over and were trying to help as well. And then she had she had been a teacher, and a former student of hers had come over and said, Mrs. P, I'm gonna take care of you. I'm gonna to do this. So he was talking to her, and we're getting stuff out, and we're like, one of the members said, what do you have? Gary Graham, who's the governor, said, what do you have? And she said, well, this is all I have. I don't have anything. So knowing that, and then going up and talking to her, afterwards, and just, she was in tears. I was in tears. It was just that impact of, she knew that the Kiwanis Club had said to her, we will take care of you after her husband passed. We will take care of you for the rest of your life. And just being there to be able to help her in that situation where she just couldn't do it herself. I know that the student that worked with her, student who was an adult at the time, completely helped her, remodel and do all that stuff. But knowing that little bit of time that we spent there was so emotional for her, and getting that stuff out of there. And yeah, we went home filthy dirty, but the love that she had for us and what we did. And I think me being able to tear that place down and know that she was going to get better living conditions. So that was one of the highlights.
That's wonderful. Beautiful. Jane?
Everywhere we went, it was such a blessing, just like
Yeah.
Sue was talking about, like every single one of them is your favorite one. And having the joy of being able to represent this organization that is so large and being vibrant and being able to go all these different places. Malaysia was one where they invited us to come, and would we go through their Down syndrome center? It's like, well, of course. But what I didn't realize was that we were going to go through 11 Down syndrome centers in 10 cities in 3 days. So by the time we hit the last one, I was so exhausted, I could barely move. I don't know how my husband, who is 22 years older than I was, I don't know how he was doing it, but they took us in to see these two little girls that they're both named Sarah, interestingly enough, and that's my daughter's name. But these two little girls were eating lunch, and the one took her little spoon and she looked up at me and she pointed to me and she said, "Auntie, sit." I thought, okay. And the little teacher was so surprised. Well, I sat down on this linoleum floor and I thought, oh, that's good. It's cool down here. And she put her arm around me and went, "Oh, Auntie." And then she rubbed the side of my face, and the teacher, she said something, and the teacher said, "Oh my goodness," she said, "you look tired." And I thought, yeah, I am. And she said, she took her little spoon, dipped it down in this rice and put it to my mouth and said, "Auntie, eat." And I said, "Oh no, that's for you." So I took one teeny tiny little grain of rice and put it in my mouth and thought, that is so hot, I'm gonna die. But then, right, I ate that, and she put her head down on my shoulder while she ate. And then she looked at the other little girl whose name was Sarah, and she said something to her in their language. And then she took her spoon again and pointed to my husband, 6'1" husband, and said, "Uncle, sit."
Oh my.
And he did. He sat down on the linoleum floor and put this great big, he had a huge hand, but he put his big hand up, and that teeny tiny little girl put her tiny little hand inside his, and she giggled. And the little teacher said, "Oh, Sarah doesn't speak to anyone." And we sat there for the longest time, just the four of us and the little teacher that was standing there. And then the teacher said, "Would you come and meet another child?" And I thought, well, of course. And I thought, I am so warm, but it's not just because I'm in this really hot environment. It's that I am filled with such joy and such
Sure.
gratitude for being part of an organization that could make this kind of positive difference. So we went in the other room and this teacher said, this little guy, I just want you to see and talk to. He's nonverbal. He won't look at you and he won't interact, but I want him to hear your voice. So I sat down on the floor there too. I thought, it's good. I'm tired. I'll just crawl out to the car. I sat down and all of a sudden this little guy made the sweetest little noise. And it's one of my most favorite pictures because it's a picture of him reaching for me and me reaching up and attempting to touch his hand. I was a little bit too far away in the photo, but I did right after that. And the teacher started crying and he smiled. And she said, I wish his mother could see that. And I thought, oh my goodness, the tears were just running down my face. And I thought, this is why we do what we do. And I will work until the end of my time continuing to help little ones. And I thought, I'm way around the other side of the world. And here I was just now complaining because I was tired. I thought, I'm not tired anymore.
No.
I thought, no, as long as there is a child in need, then I will continue to do what we do. So everything
That's
we've done
beautiful.
has been a blessing.
Yes.
It's wonderful. And you two you were both so active in the Eliminate Project and all the different, because you were both on the board, you said, right? So,
Right.
And are you still both active with the Children's Fund currently, or?
Just as donor right now.
That's great.
Right.
Because you were leading the charge when you were
Yep.
both presidents, which is huge. And doing your videos about giving, I saw those with your call to actions, speaking to other Kiwanians, which are powerful, so powerful. So I think we all have a why we joined Kiwanis. You joined when you were back in service, when you were in Circle K, correct? Or was it Key
In
Club?
Key Club,
So-
in Key
Key
Club,
Club,
right.
okay. And so your why, what is your why? I mean, it changes. I know my why has changed from when I first joined my club to now. When I see a greater need and I see a different need, it seems that's ever changing and there's just so many more people that we can affect. So what
I
is
think
your
my why goes back to the helping the kids. I mean, helping just our community in general,
Mhm.
right? Whether it's the kids, it's the elderly, and and the world is so global, right? That whether I'm in, Malaysia or Europe, or France or something like that, there's so many different things that every club, you always hear, well, our club's very unique. Well, you're right. Every club meets their needs of their community. And that's what the goal is. And whether that's, the Down Syndrome Center or whether it's, building a playground, whatever.
Right.
I think my why is it makes me happy, but it makes them happy. I can serve the things that others do and see the joy in what they're doing. And that brings me joy. And it's just that environment that you want to be in. You want to help people. When I first joined, the why was, you're right, I had been in Key Club and Circle K, so I knew
Mhm.
a lot of people and I had the opportunity to do a lot of things. And the more you go, and even now as I'm doing things with Kiwanis, it's like people are like, why do you do that? I'm like, because you know what, it gives me the joy of knowing that other people are getting joy as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jane?
I joined in 1990 when this little man walked into my office in the hospital and he said, and I had no idea who he was. He said, my name is Dean Clark and I came to ask you 2 questions. First of all, do you like this community? And I said, actually, yes, I do. I don't live here. I actually commute here an hour and 15 minutes every morning and go home every night. But yes, I do like this community very much. And he said, do you like children? I said, I do very much. And he said, then I'd like to invite you to lunch. And my first impression was, that's totally creepy. However, his next comment was, I'd like to take you to the Fort Dodge Noon Kiwanis Club. And I thought,
Okay.
brilliant. My dad is a longtime Kiwani and he has been telling me for months, I need to join a local Kiwanis club so I could be connected. Well, I'll tell you what, I went to lunch with Dean Clark and I have never looked back. That has been the most amazing experience for me. I was involved, of course, with Kiwanis through my dad. I was an honor student in 8th grade, 9th grade, whatever. But it was being involved starting in 1990, where I went to my very first meeting that day, and the gentleman across the table recognized my name, and I said, "You're the work comp insurance guy I've been working with for months. You're a real pain." And we had a great time and settled that work comp claim over lunch. Okay, that was
I love
fun.
it.
But the second was the gentleman next to him said, "We have $350 in a service account that we need to spend for kids. Do you know of any needs?" And I had just walked out of a meeting at the hospital where our OBGYN nurses were saying their babies were going home in the front seats of the car
Oh,
or on the floor because the moms couldn't afford car seats. That day, we connected the need with the Kiwanis Club, and we bought 10 car seats for that particular program. And of course, it was much larger after that. But that was that first, I mean, just like hook and reel. It's like, wow, I knew that was a powerful time for me. And that's why I joined. That's why I stay. And, just continuing to watch and see what's happening in the world and knowing that our needs of our kids are so much bigger now.
right.
I think even than they were in 1990, there's a greater need for us now
Right.
than when I joined in 1990.
Right. I know we've done a lot with the mental health piece as Kiwanians, and trying to get our Kiwanis clubs active, because it's heartbreaking and the kids need us so much. And, COVID, I think COVID brought it out. There was always a need for mental health awareness and helping our kids.
Right.
And now with the social and the anxiety issues, it's powerful. So knowing that there's just even more for us to do and more barriers just for us to break down and help, a whole different area of children. It's huge. So
Well,
Because it was an area,
go ahead.
that's it. Go ahead. Because it was an area that was not, you didn't discuss that, right?
Right,
That was not something that
exactly.
was public information. And now it is more in the forefront for everybody, that it's addressable more than it was.
which is good.
And I was going to say, even at our K Kids, it's so very different now than it was 2 years ago. This is my 24th year as a K Kids advisor, but it's very different. These kiddos, we have 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. So now our 4th and 5th graders aren't used to the way we used to do things, sitting at tables and operating as kind of a little neighborhood and the team kind of thing. They're not used to that. And I was mentioning, for the first time in 2 years, I was able to go back in last week into the schools. Otherwise, it's all been by phone calls, very different. And again, even some of the adults I work with, the mental health needs are very high. Working with the K Kids, I can see that our 4th and 5th graders aren't used to that kind of social interaction. And we had a kindergartner, the little sister of one of our members, who had no clue, I thought, how to act in that kind of a situation. So they're very different needs right now. And we need to be resilient and change right along with those needs.
And I think Kiwanis has been great at pivoting. I always think of us as
many of our clubs are.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of pivoting going on, and from the direction from Kiwanis International, even from the pieces in the magazine, and the calls to action obviously are changing, which is great to be part of an organization that's forever changing and evolving. So you talked about being a K Kids advisor. Sue, I know I've been on some of your calls where you've done your education workshops. So what projects are you guys working on now? Because once you're a Kiwanian, you're always a Kiwanian. Yes, you've served as Kiwanis International President, but I know you're both so active. So what are you guys working on now? What are your new endeavors? Sue?
I'm secretary of my club, believe it or not. I'm secretary of my club, and that was actually to help. We had a member that was our secretary that wanted to be president, and he said, "But I can't be president and secretary." We're like, "Okay, we'll make that adjustment to help the club out." I'm coaching a new club about 20 miles from here in Grand Ledge, and then I am the advisor to the Michigan State University Circle K Club. So we're back in person now, but we've done a lot of Zoom, the hybrid stuff. And then I serve as the leadership development coordinator for Michigan. So I work on all the education and training for our clubs and our lieutenant governors. And then I still serve on a couple of international groups. And then I host a program every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time called Kiwanis Let's Talk. And what started as a program 3 years ago is a way for me to connect and stay in touch with my friends. That selfishly, that's what it was. I was like, I can't, I've got to see people. I can't, home from work, the whole bit, travel had been cut off. So I started a program and said, I'm going to just try to reach out and get some people to speak once a week. Well, we're now in our third year. And we've had on the last couple of weeks had 100 people on the Zoom call and the Facebook Live, program. And it's basically, we find, I reach out to speakers, whether they're authors. We've done some Kiwanis. We did the 2 for 2 program. And then we record all that and make it available to clubs and districts. And we've done youth protection, and we've done, what member services is, but we've also done how to hunt alligators and, you name it. I mean, we've done all kinds. We had a Cajun cook on one time. I had an individual last week, John Horford, who developed an app, and I will tell you quickly that it's called Blueprint Athletes, and he gave me 1,000 free codes to distribute so people can download this program.
Wow.
It's a basketball program. So I've been doing a lot of that, just, keeping people connected. I had several people reach out to me with what's going on, in the Ukraine and say, how do we connected? So I connected some people with past President Danielle Vigneron, and then JCI, who we started a partnership back in 15, 16. They reached out to me and said, hey, look, we want to get in touch with your Kiwanians because we're in Romania doing X, Y, and Z. We could use some help on this. So a lot of what I do now is like connecting people. Like, I may not know, but here's who you can call. Here's who you can, go to. And which gives me a lot of joy because now I know there's a relationship between JCI and Kiwanis, and they're all doing what they can. And then, just promoting where, individuals could give to, to help out the situation financially for the kids over in Romania. So I still maintain a pretty busy schedule.
I think it sounds like every day of the week. I'm like, okay. There's not a free night there.
There's not a free night. And my mom often wonders, she goes, I thought you were done being president. I said, well, I'm not the president anymore. I said, but there's a lot of things that I can do right from my home.
That's awesome.
So that's keeping me busy.
Yeah, very busy. Jane?
Oh my goodness. I'm nowhere near doing what Sue is doing right now, I'll tell you that. For very personal reasons, I have been kind of off the grid for the last 2 years. And within the last couple months, I've been coming up for air and kind of recreating my life again. It's very difficult to recreate a life without your husband, but he's with me in spirit everywhere I go, and his clock rings behind me all the time.
Clocks,
so I've done a lot of workshops for a variety of districts who I either counseled or visited over the years or worked for over the years. So I've done a lot of workshops for them via Zoom. I've done a couple in person. I love working with our K kids. We last week made little cards that were inspirational cards, and they are putting them in the library books.
Oh, sweet.
Random places in the library, so that if you check out a book, you open it up and it says you're a star, or it says we're thinking about you, or you are loved, or something inspirational that the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders came up with, which I thought was delightful. And then last week I helped for an hour and a half put in the little name tags for all of the 3rd graders in our community. We are a 51,000 member community. And so all the 3rd graders get dictionaries from the Bellevue off at Kiwanis Club. So I have a trunk full of dictionaries that I will deliver to 2 schools, one in my, it's about 4 blocks from my house, and the other one where I do K kids. So I've kind of been busy doing that and creating another workshop called What's the Door Look Like to Your Club? And that one I'll be doing for the Minnesota Dakotas PR folks next week after that, might be next week. But a lot of lieutenant governor training. I'm working with our incoming governor here to do their lieutenant governor training, and lots of calls lately about how to get our young people interested in Key Leader.
Good.
Back online. So I had a long conversation again this afternoon about that. So little by little coming back and keeping
love it.
busy and finding joy in everything that we're doing. So
So we had a question, where do you see, and I think I had read this in one of the interviews you did, Sue. See, like I did all my research here, people. I'm
She
ready.
did all her
Yeah.
research.
I did all my research. I read, I watched.
Yeah.
So it's been a little while since you've both been international
Mhm.
presidents. Where do you see Kiwanis in 20 years? And I know from a membership standpoint, that has been a question. I know we just built a club in Weymouth. Woohoo! So I was excited. Great team. They did an amazing job. We got 26 new Kiwanians. Huh! Did my heart good.
job.
So I know, membership in all service organizations it's a decline, and I know membership and concern is there. So moving forward and, trying to keep that momentum up, where do you see us in 20 years as a Kiwanis organization? That was a question from the chat line there.
Did you ask Sue that, or were you
I
asking
asked you
questions?
both.
Well, okay.
I can't. Sue, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I believe that Kiwanis, we will still be around.
Okay, good.
I mean, there is definitely a need for what we do.
Mhm.
And I think getting that, communication out, and as Jane mentioned, how do we attract younger members?
Right.
We as an organization, and we've talked about this, we have to make that pivot if we're going to meet the needs of our, the younger members. And I think asking them, in fact, I had this conversation with my club today, because they're like, well, we need to bring the younger members into our club. And they said, well, we can invite them to the bench dedication. I'm like, they're not going to be interested in a bench dedication, right? I can tell you that's just not. And I said, I think we need to bring them in, and people need to talk to them, and they need to hear what we're doing. And it's on all of us to bring members into our organization. And it may be that I'm not the person that would actually go invite Gayla, but maybe I call Jane and say, hey, can you help me, introduce to Gayla to Kiwanis? But looking at things differently, like a lot of our, even I know with our Circle K, they want one and done projects right now. They're at a time in their life where this is what I have, this is what fits. And we have to be accepting of that. As hard as it is, we talk about the birthplace of Kiwanis here. We talk about it all the time. We have to realize that times are changing. And after having the pandemic and the 2 years that we were kind of shut down, we've got to look at those things. I believe that we will be vibrant. We have a lot of our youth, in K Kids and Key Club and Circle K that are still doing the work. Our Action Club, I believe we will be vibrant. But we are like many other organizations right now. And I think the first thing we have to do is we have to acknowledge that. We can't say that it's not happening.
Right.
And I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, we don't have a membership problem. Well, we do.
Absolutely.
And we have to acknowledge that's what's going on. And 20 years, we'll still be going.
Woohoo. Jane?
I believe that too. In fact, I had this conversation with a little table of fourth graders last week, and I said, and they're kind of off the wall, actually. So I said, what are you going to be doing in 10 years? You're still going to be, and one of them said, well, I'm not going to be in K Kids. And I said, well, I didn't mean, are you going to be in K Kids? Are you going to be a Kiwani and you're going to be like me? Or what are you going to do? And one of them said, in 20 years, I'm going to be really old.
Oh,
For 10 years it was, because they were going to be 20. It was in 10 years. He said, I'll be really old. They said, you'll be 20. I'll be really old. And one of them said, you know what? But kids are still going to need things that they're still going to need to be inspired. And they're still going to need notes in the library books that says you're special. Duh.
oh.
And I thought, you know what? That's true. And like Sue said, our needs, the part that was so hard for me coming through as foundation president, serving 7 years on that board, was the fact that as the needs of the kids were coming up, the amount of money that we had was not sufficient to help those, all those grants. And so the hardest part was to decide which of those grants you would fund and which you'd leave on the table. And I had said to the board members, these aren't grants you're leaving on the board tables. These are the needs of children you are leaving on the board table. These are not grants. These are help for children. And one of them said, well, what are we supposed to do? And I said, find more money. It's like, Well, I think that would be obvious. We need more funds to help our kids. Well, we need more members to help our kids as well. And
Right.
so it's that connection with people where you go out and connect with someone first, and then you connect them to our cause, which is helping children in communities. And then you connect them to Kiwanis. And I think that's one of the things that for me is the most important to pass on to people, is that we're connecting you with a cause of helping children. We're connecting you with a whole group of like-minded people who are doing the same, whether that's in Malaysia or in Belgium or in Michigan or wherever. The cause is the same, making the world a better place in which to live. And we challenge our K kids all the time to say, what will you do during this meeting today to make the world a better place in which to live? And when you walk out of this school today, and we see you now in 2 weeks, what will you do during those 2 weeks to make the world a better place in which to live? Because Kiwanis isn't something you do, it's someone you are. So
Yep.
instilling that as we connect with people, they're much more willing to come back. And so right now, being gone for so long, it's important that we remind people why we joined and give that opportunity for them to be able to connect and make a difference, so that at the end of the day, you can say, yeah, I mattered today, made the
Exactly.
world a little bit better.
Mhm.
Or I helped somebody or made them smile.
Yep.
Absolutely. Jane, we had a question for you. They wanted, someone in the chat wants you to elaborate on the bookmarks for the kids that you mentioned.
Okay. What they started with, they just had construction paper. It was actually an easy project: construction paper, glue sticks, scissors. Well, fourth graders and scissors are kind of scary, but nonetheless, what they did was some of them used a quarter of the paper. Some just used a strip like a typical bookmark. And then they had just, whether they used markers, whether they used crayons, whether it was a pen, they wrote little notes in it that you're a superstar, or reading will open your world. Thanks for being who you are. Just really tiny little inspirational kinds of things, so that what they wanted to do was that when a child came in and opened up that book, they'd say, oh, wow, this was meant for me. This is me. I am a star. So, and they were going to be in random books all over. So I'm sure the librarian.
I think we should, I think adults need that too. That would be a great,
Yes.
that'd be nice for the adults to read too. I think those words of affirmation are important, whether they're kids or adults. I think sometimes we don't do enough to say, I appreciate you or thank you. And I know being a president or a governor or a member of a club, it's just so important to tell everybody, thank you, I appreciate you, you're doing a great job.
Right.
You know,
Yes. It's important for everybody to know that they're important and needed.
right.
I think that's why we lost some of our Kiwanians in clubs, because during COVID, if it hadn't been for me, my husband would not have been able to be on a Zoom call.
Right. The technology
He
piece.
could have done it. So we sat on it together.
Absolutely.
Well, some of our older members are, well, not necessarily older, our other members who didn't have access to a computer or didn't know how to do it, kind of faded off. And if they were not contacted, well, you don't feel important and needed, why would you come back? If you didn't need me then, what do you need me now for? So there are lots of ways that I think we need to open up with that. With that question about the bookmarks, we also did the Rice Krispie treats that had the little thought bubble on them. And we put the same little inspirational notes on those. And those went in little packets in the nurse's office that had a whole thing of Kleenex on it and a tiny little stuffed animal, and they went in bags, so that when somebody came into the nurse's office and they were hurt or needed to come in for mental health reasons, they also got one of those.
Elise,
So
did you take notes on that? I think we'll be doing that at midwinter, maybe. Elise is writing things down. I'm very excited by that, Elise.
Good. Yeah, it's a cool project. And then
that is such a great idea.
Nurses and counselors loved it. And I did find out from one of the teachers that one of the teachers got one too, because she went into the office one day.
And she was probably having a bad day.
The nurse gave her one of the K-Kids packets. It's like, go for it.
I love it. What a great idea.
I mean, everyone needs that, as you said. I mean,
Mhm.
anything you can do, whether one of the things we did during the pandemic is we actually put signs up throughout the neighborhoods where there were police officers or firefighters or first
Right.
responders that said, we appreciate what you're doing.
That's cool.
The Kiwanis Club of East Lansing appreciates what you're doing. And after they were all removed, right, we're like, where are they? People are like, they're in their garages.
Ah,
Love it.
That they were so proud of it, that they were in their garages. I mean, you think we took hand sanitizer to a lot of them. I mean, and
Mhm.
people are like, well, it's not a big deal. I'm like, it is a big
It
deal
is
to
a big
people, right?
deal.
It's a big
Yeah.
deal. We provided Gatorade or whatever we could do, right? You'd like any little thing you could do. And granted, we couldn't do a lot with the kids either. We were in fact, we've just now opened up to being able to get to our schools as well.
Mhm.
But any little bit, I mean, people appreciate it. I still
absolutely.
write handwritten thank you notes and mail them. And
Mhm.
people are like, I'm like, that's who I am. That's what I do. I carry
Mhm.
them with me when I travel. And, and there may be no other reason to say, hey, I've been thinking about you. I hope you're doing great.
I still get excited about going into a Hallmark store and picking up my cards. It's just the
Ex-
aroma of cards and then going and
Yep.
get the stamps to make sure they match the cards.
That's
I'm
right.
old school. I want my Hallmark cards. I'm
That's right.
sorry. Facebook is beautiful, but I like the cards.
Yep.
Well, the
Especially
cards
when they have
go
glitter and
back to-
sparkle.
There you go. And they
Right.
fall all over your floor, except for the carpet.
So one of the things, because you two are just so wonderful and have just done so many tremendous things, and I appreciate you both so much. What words of wisdom do you have for our next generation, not only of women leaders, but of leaders in general?
If you can help more kids by doing a good job, then you best be doing it. So, and I think it's just a matter of stepping up,
Mhm.
believing in yourself, believing in the organization, believing in our cause, and knowing at the end of the day you've mattered, you've made a difference, and bringing joy into others definitely brings joy back to yourself. So, and there'll be lots of people out here to help.
Yep.
Lots of us willing to help.
And as I when I talk with our key clubbers or showcase, I'm like, now's a chance for you to take a risk. There are people here that are going to be with you. And if something doesn't work, we're going to help you through that, right? You're not on your own. And I think that was, important to me as well. It's like, there are people here that are going to help you, but you can truly make a difference, one person at a time. But
Mhm.
imagine that what we can do together. And, and sometimes just, we've been talking to people for potential lieutenant governors lately. And they're like, oh, I
Right.
just don't think I can do it. There's so much. It's like,
Right.
okay, stop.
Mhm.
Let's talk about what you can do. Let's
Mhm.
not talk about what you can't do, because you may be bringing something to the table that someone else doesn't have.
Exactly.
And no one's going to, be critical of what you did or didn't do. They're like, well, but so don't worry about the buts. Do what you can do to help out, to help the kids. When it comes back to it, it's all about helping the kids. And, reality is the work that we're doing, that our club leaders are doing, and our governors and our district leaders doing, that's service. It's just being provided in a different way.
Right. That's wonderful.
And together, Kiwanis can be a powerful force for good in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether it's in, their little K Kids club and putting those notes in the books, or whether it's giving out dictionaries, or whatever it is we're doing, it's a powerful force. And everybody wants to be part of a winning team, right? So you
right.
invite them to come in and be part of that winning team, and to be the coach or the cheerleader or whatever you need to be as part of that winning team, knowing that, one of the presidents said, but it's such a lonely place. And I said, well, then don't make it a lonely place. Call somebody and ask for help. I said, you called me, you know how to call me. I'm sure you've got somebody else's number. Step up, take that chance, and live your legacy every day. So,
oh, I love that. Live your legacy every day. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I know, does anybody else have any questions in the chat before all these cuckoo clocks go off that Jane told me you're going to go off soon?
they
She
will.
warned me. Several clocks will go off on the hour. Elise, do you have any other questions? Then I'm going to ask a really quick question before we wrap it up. Some of the things that you ladies have said that really resonated with me. Be passionate, be grateful, be family. Jane? Wow.
Yes.
And then and I'm going to say this word wrong. Sue, you'll have to correct me. You said, was it manifesto of service, or it was one of the lines in your speech and it was
Yes,
all
manifest,
about,
yes.
okay, wow. I wrote down my takeaways here, ladies.
yep.
I was like, powerful words, and everything that you do and everything you continue to do. I cannot tell you how lucky I am and how happy our district is to have you here with us. So many of us have watched you both and been amazed, and you're on our governors that got the privilege to work with both of you. Wow, how lucky were they? I know as a governor of this district, I couldn't be prouder of my New England and Bermuda district, everything that they do. And Elise, who does my education and everything, is a powerhouse. She's amazing. She keeps me on task, which I love. We do have such a great team in our New England and Bermuda district of supporters that are willing to help anybody and support me and my lieutenant governors and my chairs. And again, thank you too much. I'm so excited to have you. I got my goosebumps. Your stories, your passion, you're both an inspiration. So thank you so much for being with us all tonight. I appreciate it. And the rest of you, you're amazing. And I love you, my New England and Bermuda district. And I'm hoping I'll see you all in midwinter coming up this weekend. Woohoo!
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Yes.
Can
It
I
was great.
can I share a couple things that I've gotten in the chat?
Absolutely. I
Sure.
missed them. I'm sorry.
No, they were sent to me, just to me, as a thank you. Cindy said, you are both so inspiring. Thank you, Jane, for being our key litter facilitator for about 10 years or about 10 years ago in New England.
Mhm.
Brian Cofrancesco wrote me
yep.
a novella. So everybody sit back.
Oh, they both love you, Brian.
Speaking of key leader, love you,
Yes.
Brian.
Brian wrote, Jane was my key leader facilitator when I was in Key Club. Hands down, my experience learning about leadership from her that weekend almost 20 years ago is why I stayed in the Kiwanis family. She has shaped me as a leader, and I still share many of the lessons she taught us. Sue and
Now
I met.
Thank you.
Sue and I met each other when I was in Circle K, and she was part of our team rolling out the Eliminate project. She was so friendly and welcoming to us wide-eyed college students at the table. Jane and Sue have both been inspirations in my Kiwanis career, and I was so proud to be at the 2015 International Convention when they were elected as president and president-elect. I am struck that they are both here with us tonight.
Oh, Brian,
Thank
we
you.
all love
Thank
Brian's
you.
just the best.
My gosh.
Okay, I'm like crying just listening to his speech
Yeah.
about them. Is there
Why?
more? Because
Yeah.
you didn't tell me I needed Kleenex tonight.
It's not the first Kiwanis meeting we leave in tears. I can tell you that.
Okay.
Yes, just a lot of thank yous. You could probably read them in the chat. And if we could all just give a big round of applause to our presenters. Thank you so much, Governor Gayla, past President Sue, and past President Jane. According to our interclub liaison, David Griffin, we had 18 clubs here tonight, plus
great.
the members who are represented on Facebook. And we do these once a month now, the first Wednesday of every month at 7 o'clock Eastern time, 8 o'clock Atlantic time. So stay tuned for more useful content. I'd encourage our members to invite other members to join us. All of our workshops that we offer, all of our conversations are free. And you know, we don't charge for these, we charge for the conferences, but everything virtual is free. So lots of exciting information. Past workshops, we put them all on our YouTube page. I just sent a link in the chat to our link tree, which has all of that information in it, all of our links in one consolidated click. So you can access our Facebook page, our Facebook group, our YouTube channel, and the registrations for these and future workshops. I would like to thank our district education committee members, Brian Cofrancesco, who is assistant to the leadership development coordinator, and David Griffin, who is our wonderful interclub liaison, who helped behind the scenes to make these workshops a success. And thank you again, Gayla, Jane, and Sue. We really appreciate you coming and visiting us here virtually. And make sure that you guys are all staying tuned for future workshops. Stay safe, be well. We will see some of you in person this weekend at our midwinter conference. And everyone else, we will see you back here on Zoom on April 6th. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bless.